Hello there, I'm AYB, founder of Spark AI, where we help businesses automate their process and implement AI in their workflows. So today we'll be looking at how to read API documentation like a pro. And what exactly are API documentation? It is just a um, set of rules, right, that you must follow if you actually want to interact with a web app. So we're going to be looking at three case studies. We're going to look at JotForm, Asana, and OpenAI. So let's start from JotForm. So this is JotForm API documentation. All you need to do is just type JotForm API documentation, something like this. If you just come over and check JotForm API documentation, JotForm API documentation, you can see it's going to pull up this particular JotForm API, right? And then there's once you click on it, you see this particular page that I'm on. Okay, so you just come over here to the page, right? If you check the documentation, I will have in this particular place where we can see something like authentication. So authentication is just a way an API or the server verifies if you have authority to actually make certain requests. So when we are like trying to make requests using a particular API, the server actually verifies if we have the authority. And when we can actually get this particular authority or have this access is if we have a particular unique key called the API key or the API token, depends on which web app we're dealing with. So in this particular scenario, what we'll do is like now we come over to this place where we have the endpoints. So these are like the end, like the resource, right? And each resource actually has an endpoint, right? What we actually want to do is to retrieve a form submit a form submission. So we come over to this submission, and then we come over to not even submission. We come over to form, and then we come over to get form submission, right? So this is the particular one we're using, right? Remember, if you've not watched my video, my last previous video, I explained about three scenario about how to use webhooks. You can watch it, and I mentioned that there are quite different methods of making requests to an API. We have get, we have put, we have post, and we have patch, we have delete. Get is used for retrieving data. We use post for creating new one, put for editing, and also patch for editing, and delete for deleting. Right. So this is the URL. Right. This is the endpoint URL. This is where we are going to be. This is what we're going to use to send what we want to send. So what we have here is just the parameters, right? So we have two types of parameters. We have path parameters, and then we have the body parameters. Some APIs actually shorten it as param. So just know that it's actually parameter. So we're going to look about two APIs where API documentation. You see how they actually highlight each. This is from the simplest, like definitely to the one that is much more complex, which is not really that complex actually. So one thing we need in this particular API is that we need this URL, and then as you can see, we need a form ID, and then we also need the API key. So how do we get all of these things? I'll tell you how, and then you can also see that the API key is actually a required parameter, and also the ID of the form is actually a required parameter. So you'll not be able to make any of these requests if you don't have the two of them, right? So one way you can actually access this particular, sorry, I cannot uh okay, I think I can make the request without getting my just form. So what I'll do is that so the first thing I want to do is to get, so once you load the form, this particular stuff you have there is the form ID, right? So let's come over here and copy the exact stuff here. So just come over here and then we'll copy it, right? Go over to Postman. Postman is used for testing APIs. We'll be using Postman to test the APIs we have here. Although we can use Zapier also to test it, right? But we can. I want us to use Postman. And now you can see that we have access. We need to actually check. We have to add the API key, and we also have to add the form ID. So just come over here and then copy the form ID, right? Just come over here and copy the form ID. right? And then we copy it to come over to the Postman, and then we paste it right within this coily bracket. And we paste it. Then what we need now is like the API key. So the API key is added as a path parameter, right? So can come over here, and how we get the API key, we have to log into our uh JotForm, then come over to the API right here. If you click this avatar, your avatar icon, then come over to API, then you can just copy this particular key here. You copy it, come over here, and then you just paste it right after this particular stuff here. Right, so you can see, make sure that you don't have any spaces in between. It might really affect our stuff. So we just want to retrieve. We are not even actually sending anything, so we don't really have to add anything. So we are done. So we can send this particular request, and 200 okay. 200 okay is just for for you to know that okay, the request was actually granted. So we're able to retrieve, and let me see if I can show you some of the things that we retrieved here. So let's see it. So you can see that we retrieved a particular form, John Doe is the name, the email, and some other things. Jensen Guang, the like the email and so that. So this is using how to communicate using JotForm. So let's check that of Asana, right? Let's check their documentation. How can we send data there? Now the first thing is for you to get Asana's documentation, type on Asana and API documentation, right? So if you check Asana API documentation, you see something like overview, right? So if you see this overview, right, this is their documentation, quite easy, very easy to locate. So I already have it right here. So if I come over here, now, like I said, on this your on your left hand side, you see, so sorry, on your right hand side, you see this particular all this stuff you have here, they are the resource, right? And what exactly, like, it's just trying to explain to you what exactly do you want to do with the API, right? So right now, I come over to projects and I want to create a project, right? And sorry, I want to create a project. And now, if I click on project now, you see that it gives me all of the things I need to create a project, including the endpoint URL and the scope, the required parameters, and even an example request that I have. So these are the things I'm actually going to be needing, right? So one thing I want to do is that I also want to check, okay, how do I authenticate stuff here? And so they said the authentication method is authorization, then I'll put bearer, and then I'll put access token, right? Pretty easy, right? So how will I access my access token, right? So I come over to my Asana account. You create an Asana account. Let me see how show you how I can do that. So you come over to your Asana, come over to your Asana, right? And then you click on this your avatar icon. You come over to profile settings, and you come over to settings, and then you come over to apps, right? Right here, apps, and you see something like view developers console. So the moment you click on view developers console, it takes you to this particular place. Let me show you so that you see what I mean. So I click on this, you will land right here where you will be prompted to like create an API key. I already done that, so I didn't want to do it again. So now I'm not creating an API token. I've done quite a number of this. If I want to create it, I'll just click on this and I'll create the API token. So this is the API. I can just copy it, right? I've done that already. So if I come over to my Postman, right? Remember, this is like the endpoint URL. So I copy this particular endpoint URL. I come over to my Postman and post it there, right? I really want to clear this response. Right, the next thing I want to do is like I want to verify, I want to do the authentication. Based on what we have here, the authentication that we have here is authorization, then bearer, then the access token, right? If you check that, you see you write I'll just put authorization, right? I don't need to do that again. Then I'll put bearer, then I'll put space, and I'll paste my API token. Make sure there's a space after the bearer, right? So after I've done that, then exactly what I want. Remember, you have to choose post. Post is like you want to create. Like I said, post is used for creating a resource. Get is used for retrieving a resource, right? So next I want to do is that I want to like, okay, what exactly do I want to send? Now, one thing that you have to be wary and be careful about is that, and although some of these APIs are not, they're not perfect actually. So there are some things that they're supposed to like add, but it's not added. Now, like I think I said it when we were looking into the JotForm API documentation, that there's something we have like two types of parameters. We have query parameters and body parameters. You can see that the explain it here. Query parameters are actually parameters that can be added right after the endpoint URL. You just have a question mark and then you add it, right? But bar parameters cannot be added after, like, to an endpoint URL. You can, like, you have to send it as a body, right? So now we have the body parameters, right? And as the body parameter, we have name. These are like the body parameter. And now I think there's one mistake that they made here. They actually ought to like tell us that there are some parameters that are actually required, right? Although some APIs actually do that due diligence and they tell us that okay, this API this particular parameter is actually very very important. Now the workspace ID is a very important parameter. You can't even create anything without the workspace ID and the name, right? So these are the most important parameters that we have to add. So if you come back to my stuff, you see that we have the name. I have the name as Spaghetti. I want to change it so that let's say I want to put something like um let's say I want to add NVIDIA. So something different. NVIDIA. Right? So we have something like that. Now you have to get the workspace ID. So how will you get the workspace ID? Now, one way to get the workspace ID is to come over to your workspace, right? Or come over to your Asana account, and then head over to. Let me show you. Um, so if you come over to your, if you come over to your Asana, click on this your avatar, and then go back to my workspace. So if you check my workspace, this particular number that is slightly after the admin, right? That is your workspace ID, right? 12110. So you copy this particular stuff and then you put it right. Yeah, so that's your workspace ID. Make sure you put this particular thing, or else this thing is not going to work, right? Now we are sending it in form of like a form data. We are not using raw. Okay. The next one we're going to use raw, right? So now if we send this particular data right now, we've added all the things that we need to add. Just press send. Let's see what exactly will happen. So it was created. So one, the resource we have created. If you check our um, Asana accounts, you should see NVIDIA created as a project. That's exactly how to use this to send to create particular resource. So we looked at how to retrieve, looked at how to create. Let's look at the last one, and that would be like OpenAI, right? And this one is quite. It's really going to stress you slightly, not really, really, but let's just quite. The reason because I tried to use their documentation, but it didn't work. So I had to like look for a way to solve that, right? And now we're still using the chat completion. We're still using Postman to test. So, but I the first thing I want to do URL, the endpoint URL, you copy the endpoint URL, this one, exactly like this. Want to post, want to create a post request, then right here. But this particular body, right, we're using raw. The body we're using here is quite similar to this. Is quite similar to this. Although there are other chat completion here that I tried using but didn't work. This particular chat completion didn't work, right? Because it says that we have to add a particular um model parameter that includes like top P, the temperature, and all that. But this is the one that solves the particular problem, and we are able to add the model parameters like the max token and then the temperature and all that. Right. So just use this particular one. It's going to work. Right. Add all the this particular content type. Right. Content type is an example of an header. So what my header like now authorization header is like the header used to verify, okay, if you have the authority to actually make that request. We also have content type as an header. Like it's just trying to say, okay, this particular thing that you want to send the body, what is the type of body that is being sent? So it's usually in form of JSON. So that's why content type is always JSON, right? So you don't have to cram it. We have it Postman already have it stored. You just click on content type. So if I want to click on, I'll just click on content type right here, and then to pull it out, and then I can always just put it there. So I don't have to do that again. So the next thing is to get the bearer. Okay, how do they do the authorization? You can see that we have authorization, then we have bearer space OpenAI API key. So you just do like that. So I put my API key. Just get your API key from your OpenAI accounts, right? And then you paste it here, right? And that's it. And if you check the body, you see that we have the name of the model. Now I want to change it to something very chic. I can just say, write me a ballad or something like that. Let me just say, write me a ballad, and I add the number of tokens, right? And they have also add the temperature and the topi, right? There's nothing required again. But after I've done this, or you have done this, you have added the header and all of the things that you need to add. There's really no anything you have to do again than to just send this request. Just make sure you use this particular body, right? Exactly like this. Right, this body that we have here, the model, the prompt, the max token, and the temperature. You can always access it from the OpenAI, their API reference, but make sure it's not the chat the first chat completion. It is the one that is under legacy. Right? The first one is going to give you problem. This is the one that is going not going to give you problem, right? Now, so if I run this particular stuff, let's see exactly what it will give me. So it's still running. So 200, okay. So it was able to like create this particular. So if I read this particular song, it gave us the ballad, and then you say about the brave young knight, blah 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 blah. So this is exactly how it is, right? So this is exactly how to like read API documentation. One thing you have to be to take note of is that you have to have the method, then you have to have, okay, what exactly, in what format do you want to send it? Do you want to send in JSON or form? Or, and you also have, okay, what verification method or what authentication method do they use? They use API key, or they use token, or any other method. So this is exactly how to read API documentation. The pro, and remember to like, subscribe, and then comment this video. See you guys in the next video.